Hey, it's me, the resident artist person who talks about working on an illustrated novel all the time. And yet, I don't even quite have a first chapter to show, despite working on the story for a long time by now. Longer even, if you count some very different approaches to Kiyu and her adventures. Before I give you a timeline, I have to tell you a bit about the story and the way I want to tell it. Kiyu is an amnesiac who was washed ashore close to the port city and trading hub of the north, Durford. Since her memory isn't returning, she's getting restless and frustrated with her situation. That's when a night hound, otherwise known as a witch hunter, arrives in the area. Magic has been demonized for a couple of decades in this world, ever since people with magical abilities opened a rift and let Wraith into this world. Driven by an ever-present hunger, Wraith have amassed quite a death toll since their arrival. For Kiyu, one thing leads to another, and there's credible evidence that she has magical abilities. And when a raging Wraith shows up, she has little choice but to use them. It's not a very polished summary yet, but it covers the major points that have been consistent in all drafts of the first chapter so far. Besides this, there were meetings of 4 of the main cast in that first chapter, but that felt very awkward. So as of very recently, 2 of them won't make an appearance until later. There was more wallowing on Kiyu's part, but that hampered her growth long term, as it kept her passive for longer. I still have those drafts around, of course, somewhere deep in my Scrivener files. In some ways they were necessary to explore, if only for me to see how it couldn't work and to get to know my characters better. Especially with a character as old as Kiyu, it's not always easy. There are parts of her previous incarnations that sometimes want to peek through when they aren't welcome. And yes, all that is just the first chapter. There are broad strokes plans for how the story goes, but I'm also kind of stuck in rewriting hell, to be honest. I've got high hopes, it's finally shaping up after all just trial and error though. As for the form I want to tell the story in, if you've watched my inspirations video from a couple months ago, you might remember me talking about a book series by Alexei Pechov. It's called Strash, which translates to Guardians. It is told in an episodic format, as though there are several short stories or even novellas collected in the books, and the through line of the story becomes clearer the further in you go. And ever since I've read that series, I wanted to do something similar. So the first chapter of Kiyu's story is kind of like a novella, maybe a longer short story. And crafting that has been a journey in itself. While the first chapter needs to be something that stands by itself, it also needs to be a thought-out starting point of the larger story. So let's go back in time by a couple of years. Have I really been writing chapter 1 for 9 years? Not quite really. Kiyu in particular has been around for a lot longer. I can find out of her from as far back as 2011, and her story has undergone major changes in that time, as is normal. However, around 9 years ago, I solidified a couple of parts of her story, which is still sticking around. Mainly her amnesia, as well as the main cast of characters. And right after I solidified that, I shelved the story in favor of working on my webcomic Soul's Journey, which had only been a couple of chapters in at that point. I knew that working on 2 big projects at once would not be feasible, especially since I thought to turn Kiyu's story into a comic then as well. So I drew Kiyu from time to time and dreamt of being able to tell her story, but focused on the project that was already underway. Then, in late 2021, I finally finished drawing the last page of Soul's Journey. That didn't quite mean the end of it. I had a buffer, as in enough of a backlog of pages. In that time, I would launch a Kickstarter and maybe get Soul's Journey printed. And that happened in February 2022. Only it didn't work out. The Kickstarter didn't reach its funding goal, and soon after the last couple of scheduled pages went up, and I was finally free of Soul's Journey. Or so I thought. My frantic race to the finish line with drawing pages, putting together an ultimately unsuccessful campaign to crowdfund the printing of Soul's Journey, and then stressing about getting a small batch of books printed anyway, took a toll. Something I wouldn't really recover from for a while. I talked about that a bit in my last video, if you want more detail. Originally, I fancied myself able to take a month or 2 as a break and then soldier on, but once the pressure was gone, I just turned into a creative equivalent of a puddle on the floor, and I was steeping in self-doubts. Was I even able to tell an engaging story? Soul's Journey saw an almost constant decline in returning readers over the last years of me working on it. Clearly, I hadn't managed to capture people's excitement. And looking back, I feel the story was a bit of a mess too. Might have been growing pains, but to this day I have a complicated relationship with that project. And so time just passed. I did some planning and writing here and there, but nothing solid. And it wasn't really until 2023 that I finally felt the pull of wanting to tell a story again. And that's where Kyo's story finally comes into play. And also where I made blunder after blunder yet again. In late 2023, I participated in NaNoWriMo. It wasn't the first time, but the first time I won Nano. I reached 50,000 words in that month, and they weren't good. Not by a long shot. The rough outline I had was something I completely disregarded in favor of pantsing. Something I'm prone to do when I'm stuck, and it derailed a lot of things. To some degree, I blamed the pressure I put on myself. Writing 50,000 words in a month when you're not in a regular habit of writing is not easy. Especially since I only put minimal preparation into the story before I tried flying with it. It came apart at the seams quickly. And yet again, I was written out. I couldn't face writing for a while because I felt like I sucked at it so bad. Right now, I'm in the process of finally putting proper effort into an outline, plotting things out as much as I can. I've got outlines for the first 4 chapters now, some more solid than others, but I'm also the type that I tend to go into more detail when I'm a bit stuck on the larger strokes, just to see how it might play out, play by play. I decided to go with handwritten notes first, that way when I'm too stuck, instead of going off the rails, I can just doodle a bit. When I type them out later, I can flesh them out a bit more and streamline the plot better. It's slow going, however. I had hoped to be farther along by now, but I'm not. Then again, the first 4 months of the year are exhausting even without creative endeavors on the side. So, here are the lessons I've learned from myself so far. Stories take time to develop, they change and grow with me, my hopes and fears. Rushing it and pressuring myself too much is a surefire way of not getting to the goal. Quantity has little to do with quality. Pantsing is not for me. I need to set more realistic goals for me and my lifestyle, and that goes outside of writing as well. That is all I've got for you on my slow writing journey so far. I hope that if you've been stuck on your first chapter or just early in your story and feel like you're not making any progress, that this helped you not feel as alone. Because I'm right here, trudging along at a snail's pace. If you want to learn a bit more about my characters, I have some shorts on each of them, so feel free to check those out. And if you've liked listening to me ramble on while maybe watching the video, maybe just having it on as audio, feel free to leave a like and follow me. It helps me out in the algorithm a lot. That's it. Yours truly. Till next time. Bye bye.